Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please be advised that this is the notes presentation for Unit 2, Lesson 4. In this particular lesson, we're going to be looking at Amendments 2 through 10 as part of the Bill of Rights. We're going to explain to you the outline and contour of those rights as stipulated by the Constitution and provide some contemporary examples so that you know your rights in almost every situational context imaginable. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we begin, please let me encourage you to open up today's lesson on the Google Doc on Google Classroom and fill in any key content or answer any key concept questions that appear. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights. So the Second Amendment states that you are protected and you have the right to bear arms, which means the right to own a gun. However, upon closer examination, it might help to provide some history for context here. Our founding fathers did believe that government for the time could become so tyrannical that the need to protect your family, your property, and yourself would be important. There's many people still to this day who believe in that fundamental backdrop as a story and a narrative for owning a gun and the need for protection. But what is the debate with the right to bear arms all about, really? I guess the questions really come down to how much can the government keep guns from criminals and youth? And in order to keep guns away from criminals, does that limit the right of law-abiding citizens? Those are all fair and worthy questions, which we're going to be looking at later with the other parts of our lesson. Thousands of people die every year because of guns. This is true. However, to be fair, thousands of crimes are prevented because of guns as well. It's important to think about both sides of this complicated issue. For example, whenever a gun massacre happens in the United States or anywhere around the world, people obviously mourn the loss of those involved, and they look at the issue. However, it seems to be that we have a hard time articulating what the issue is and where does it come from. Is the issue the gun itself? Or is the issue societal and cultural pressures and or maybe mental health issues that warrant a person to act in a certain way? Moreover, how do we go about solving these issues? Well, that's where you come in later. The Third Amendment. The Constitution states, and I quote, "No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in the time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law." So what does it actually mean? Well, basically, this means that we cannot be forced to house or quarter soldiers. This might not seem like a commonly used right or amendment, such as gun ownership or free speech, but think about why this matters in the grand scheme of things. Not being forced to house soldiers without consent means that you have access to your own private property and privacy without any soldiers coming in there for any types of reasons that they might see fit. Amendments 4 through 8 deal with the rights of the accused, and they're important to preserve for our freedom, especially when it comes to our encounters with the law. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution basically states that this protects the people from unreasonable searches and seizures. This means that the police must have a warrant to enter our homes, and it also means the government cannot take our property, our papers, or even us without a valid warrant based on probable cause. In this way, you could look at the word probable cause as a good and legitimate reason. Also, in regards to the Fourth Amendment, think about this. What does a policeman need in order to search your home? To elaborate a little bit more, a warrant given him by a judge is really important. There can be all types of legal trouble if there's not a warrant given and used. Probable cause is also needed too. Keep in mind, if these two things are not present, this could result in trouble for the law enforcement official and or other people involved. Let's talk about the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment protects people from being held for committing a crime unless they are properly indicted or accused. You cannot be tried for the same crime twice. We call this double jeopardy. And you do not have to testify against yourself. For example, you can say, and you might have heard this before, "I plead the Fifth," which of course is avoiding self-incrimination. You must have due process of law before you are convicted, and the government cannot take your land unless it pays. These are really important to think about when it comes to your interaction with the law. The Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment states that this is a right guaranteed to a speedy trial. You can't be kept in jail for over a year without a trial. Think about how important this is. In some other countries, there is no trial, and there's no justice. You might be thrown in jail without being told of why, and you may never actually get a trial. But in the United States, with this amendment in mind, you will in fact get a trial and have a chance to plead your innocence. An impartial jury is also mandated, which doesn't already think you are guilty. An impartial jury, of course, is willing to hear your case. Once again, the accused can confront witnesses against them, and you have a chance to show your side of the story in the best way possible to not only prove your innocence, but to convey your side. The accused must be allowed to have a lawyer as well. You must be provided a lawyer if you cannot afford one. And once again, this is important because lawyers make the case to plead your innocence in this way. Now, the Seventh Amendment stipulates very clearly that every citizen is guaranteed the right to a jury trial in civil cases. Think about how important it is to be heard by your peers when it comes to pleading your innocence. This, of course, is incredibly helpful because lawyers come into play when they make convincing arguments, and so too do you if you ever have to go in front of a jury or a court to plead your innocence or your side of the story. The Eighth Amendment basically stipulates here that you are guaranteed that punishments will be fair and not cruel and unusual, and that extraordinary large fines will not be set. We call this bail. This is really important mostly because when we think about the way that justice works, sometimes the consequences throughout our history have been rather severe. So how we engage with cruel and unusual punishment has changed. And yes, there are differences from state to state to state when it comes to how consequences of the law are dealt with, but the point remains the same. The Ninth Amendment states that all rights not stated in the Constitution and not forbidden by the Constitution belong to you, the people. We have private rights that are not necessarily listed in the Constitution. But this is one of the beauties of the Constitution itself, is that it allows us the chance to change it and modify it in our image. And the 10th Amendment is basically all about states' rights. The 10th Amendment states that any power not granted to the federal government belongs to the states or to the people. For example, states have the ability and the authority to challenge certain provisions by the federal government and advocate for their states' rights. And in many cases, the states can win. So there you guys have it. Those are Amendments 2 through 10. Please be advised that we will be looking at the other amendments 11 through 27 later on, and we'll also be talking about the future of the Constitution and other key provisions that might be added in our lifetime. Once again, you can replay any part of this presentation that you need for clarity or for support. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you are able to complete the rest of the lesson knowing what you know now. Thank you.